Well, my name is Juliana Nykolaiszyn with the Oklahoma State University Library. Today is Friday, October 3rd, 2008, and I'm in the Angie DeBow room here on the campus of Oklahoma State University in the library, interviewing J.D. Edmonson, a 1934 graduate of Oklahoma A&M College. This interview is being conducted as part of O State Stories, an oral history project of the OSU Library. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm here.
Well, I want you to start by telling us where you're from originally, where you grew up.
Well, I was born on Clinton, Oklahoma, on the farm, about 3 east and about 2 south of Clinton. And that was in November 12, 1909. We lived there a little over 2 years, and Dad decided he was going to take an adventure, so he signed on with the Woodward Plantation in Mounds, Louisiana, to be in charge of swine production on their plantation. We went down there and at my age, I don't remember it. But in the second year down there, 1913, there was a nice flood on the Mississippi River, and been across the river from Vicksburg, and it takes a bend to the west there at Vicksburg, and the levee broke. That whole country, which was flat, was underwater. At the time, my mother and I were back in Oklahoma, where father passed away at Ada, Oklahoma. Dad wired and says, don't come back till I let you know. And I don't know, after a while, why he and one of the black men rigged up a boat or a canoe with a outside rigger on each side, and they went down the railroad track to Tallulah, the county seat, although in Louisiana they're parishes. And my mother and I took her back to Mounds. Mounds is about all that's there is the plantation store, a sawmill, and a cotton gin. And at that time around Mounds, there were about 40 blacks to each white person. It was a plantation. So Dad decided that he'd had enough water, so we went back to Oklahoma. So we lived at Clinton. And he farmed. We had a quarter section there, and then he farmed some other land. Wheat and feed grains, because you had to raise the feed for your livestock and your horsepower. And we farmed with horses and mules. And he finally bought an old oil pull Rumley tractor before we left there. I don't know how successful it was, but the tractors were not too successful at that time. And the thrashing was done with steam engines and threshers. And we raised wheat and oats and feed for the livestock. And we raised sheep, we had milk cows, and pretty well raised our living right there on the farm. And of course his main object was raising Duroc hogs. And we raised those, and he hauled those to Clinton, put them on a railroad car and sent them to Oklahoma City. And we stayed there until through 1920. And he moved to Oklahoma City and bought a little acreage out on South May Avenue, just southwest of Packentown. And he was going into purebred swine business. Well, that lasted about 3 years till he was broke, and we traded the equity there on those 12 acres for an old poor farm up in southwest Logan County. So we moved there in January 1, 1924. And believe it or not, my uncle lived on West 14th Street in Oklahoma City, and we had those sheep in his backyard, and we left there about daybreak, January 1, 1924, drove that flock of sheep with a team and wagon up May Avenue. And when we got past 16th Street, we was in open country, believe that or not. I wouldn't want to drag one sheep with a halter on it up that now. But we went north on May Avenue to Edmond Road, a mile east to Pennsylvania, and then north into Logan County, and then 3/4 of a mile west to our house. So it was a pretty direct route. While before I left Clinton, I joined the 4-H club. And in Oklahoma City, I was in the 4-H club, and I had as my projects swine and chickens, and we had a little cornfield, so I had some corn. And while there, I took a trip to Kansas City, and while in Logan County, I continued my 4-H club work, and I expanded it, so I had swine and sheep and calves, and I showed those in Logan County at the fairs, at Oklahoma City at the stock show and state fair. And 1927, I made a trip with the 4-H club to Chicago. That was quite an adventure for an old country boy. And then in 1929, I made another trip to Chicago. A little older and saw more things. And International Harvester Company they took us out there to the plant, and that was quite a thing to see. And we saw the Art Institute, and I don't know, a bunch of other places, as well as the stock show. Oh, and I graduated from Nykolaiszyn High School, which is a little old consolidated high school, little wooden building. And it had 4 teachers, but we had all the grades. And I played basketball and I played a little tennis out on an open court, out on dirt floors. And for example, we played basketball down at Deer Creek High School. You know, that's west of Edmonton, which is now a great big school. And we played down there on the dirt court. So they've changed too. Well, we played on the baseball team. And other than that, Nykolaiszyn High School was, I graduated in 27, but I still hung around there, played with them. They didn't have as strict a rule as they do now. And then in 1930, Dad leased the old farm for oil and got enough money to pay off the mortgage and bought a new car. And then that fall I started school, college, here at Stillwater. Why don't we cut it off a minute?
Sure.
Need a drink of water?
Yeah, better do that. Oh, that's some of the history.
That's good background.
You didn't tell him that you went to school on a horse and buggy.
What's that?
You didn't tell him you and your brother went to school on a horse and buggy out of Clinton.
Oh. Well, we drove the old horse and buggy 5 miles to Clinton to school.
Little boys at that time.
I bet.
Wouldn't think of doing that nowadays.
Oh, no.
No.
I have a brother about 4.5 years older. Yeah.
All right, you ready?
Shall we start with their old college?
Well, I just want to ask you one question
Okay.
before we start with college. And as a high school student, did you ever come up to Stillwater for Roundup, 4-H Roundup?
Oh, yeah. Well, it was up here. Well, let's see, we moved up to Divina in 24, so I was up here every summer. And then when I was in college, I wasn't here at Roundup, but after that, I was here at Roundup every year until I retired. And I got one story that I want to be sure and tell, and that was when, let's see, that was I think it was in 36. I ran up and they had a big old tent set up just east of one of the girls' dormitory. It wasn't Hannah, it was the other one. Oh, you know,
Thatcher.
Cordell.
Thatcher. Just on the west side of Thatcher. Great big old tent. Had all those kids under that. And that night, B.A. Pratt, the state 4-H leader, had all of the legislators there under that tent. And that's when it blew down with all those kids and all those folks under it. No one was seriously hurt, but as a result of that, they got the money for Gallagher Hall. Only it was named the 4-H and Student Activity Building. And if you can find it somewhere under the cover there, why, it's still up there.
That's a good reason to build it, I guess.
Well, you know, at that time, the laws were such that the legislature couldn't appropriate money for a building for a gymnasium. But they got it changed. Well, they didn't build a gymnasium, they built a 4-H and student activity building.
Absolutely.
So that's a fact. And there's a lady at Pond Creek, lived there for a good long while. She's now in Denver. Was a 4-H type girl from Nykolaiszyn County that was under that tent at that time. Oh. That I know for a fact. I wasn't under the tent. At that time I was assistant county agent in K County. And a bunch of us was sitting on the sidewalk just across the street from when we could see and hear everything. Yeah. Well,
Let's go ahead and take a drink.
yeah. Well, that was interesting little sideline after I got through college.
Let's talk about your early years in college. Did you always want to go to college?
Yes, I did, because my mother's brother, who lived in Texas, was one of the early day county agents in Texas. And he finally wound up in Travis County at Austin. And that's where he spent most of his time as a county agent. He never was in college, but they picked up a farmer that was interested in agriculture. So that's how extension got started. I think it was 1914, Smith-Lever Act, that established the county agent system. Well, that's some of my background, and that's probably why I wanted to go to college.
Why did you choose Oklahoma A&M?
Well, that was the only one. I was in agriculture in 4-H, and that's their headquarters.
Okay, fair enough.
The one down south was a society.
So tell me a little bit about the classes you remember taking. Do you remember any of your classes?
Well, let me start. Back then, you didn't take those ACT tests, and when you came on campus, you took a bunch of tests. And I took all my tests, and some of we students, we discussed them pretty well. My chemistry test somewhere got shoved off in the trash or somewhere, so I had to take it again. Well, I never had chemistry, but I made a pretty good grade on that second test. So I got in a class with kids that had chemistry in high school. I forgot that first teacher's name, but it was on a Saturday. Well, it wasn't. The lab was on Saturday. And, well, that first semester wound up with an A in that class.
Not too bad.
Second semester was a B, but that's all right too. But anyway, in those days it was on a 3-point basis instead of 4 like it is now. And I had, well, it was 2.5, so that first semester, so I was eligible for Phi Eta Sigma, which I'm a charter member. They established it that year. Snuck by. And as far as that's concerned, I made the honor roll every semester except the senior year, and I enrolled in 15 hours. And after classes started, I enrolled in an engineering class, ag engineering. There was only 2 enrolled, so they didn't teach it. That semester made straight A's and didn't make the honor roll. Had to have 15 hours. Oh. I wound up with the highest grade in the School of Agriculture that year, or for the 4 years, which wasn't too good compared to what they do now.
Pretty good for back then.
It was all right then. Yeah. Well.
Do you remember some of the buildings you had classes in?
What?
Some of the buildings you had classes in?
Oh, sure. Whitehurst, of course, that was the main building, and Morrill Hall. The English building, which isn't there anymore. That one was just right south of the engineering building, old engineering building. And then the library, which isn't there anymore. You remember where that was?
Was it in the old Williams building? It's moved many places.
It was just south of the English building.
Mm-hmm.
Down there in that was a parking lot. Now they got a building in it. But anyway. Then I had classes in the old dairy building, which just went bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.
The animal science building, I had lots of classes out there. The old animal husbandry arena.
Well, where did you live while you were going to school?
My freshman year was spent in Crutchfield Hall, which don't exist anymore. And I joined FarmHouse fraternity and lived there the other 3 years. And it was 713 College.
How many fraternity brothers lived in the house?
Oh, there weren't very many. There were probably 15 that lived in the house. That was the old Seder Alpha house before they built the one where they still are. Oh.
Did you enjoy your time in FarmHouse?
Sure did.
Tell me a little about your experiences in the fraternity.
Well, I wasn't a social. I learned enough in the dancing thing that I got by at 1 or 2 dances. So that took me out of competition with one certain girl. But that's all right. I found another one that put up with me, and we got along. No, there was one item that, on a couple of occasions I found the bottom of the pond. One time right at the noon hour when they was all going back to class, I got dumped in the pond. And let's see, my junior year, 3 of my fellow members drove to University of Illinois for the fraternity annual meeting. That was quite an adventure, and one of the boys had a brother who lived in Chicago, so we had to go on to Chicago and spend a little bit of time with him. I drove the old car down Michigan Avenue one night. I don't think I'd want to do that now. That was in 33. And then I was back up Chicago in December 33 with the college judging team, livestock judging team. And during the summer while the World's Fair was up there, and so we saw where they started it and where they cleaned up after it.
Was the judging team pretty good?
Well, we placed second, and Ohio State University beat us 16 points out of 5,000.
Did you judge all 4 years while you were here?
No, it just, it's that senior year. Well, we judged And your junior year, the team is selected. And then in the spring of the junior year, we judge at Fort Worth in the spring. And that was an interesting trip because that was in 33 and the president at that time was inaugurated in March, early March. And when Franklin D. was inaugurated, he declared a bank holiday. If you had $1 million in the bank, you couldn't get it. And we was 5 old boys trying to get a few dollars together to make a trip. Well, I had a little advantage. I was still treasurer at the house at that time, and so I had a few dollars in the box. So we borrowed that, and I think I helped some of the other boys make the trip, but we made it. And Wild Arlo was our coach, and he furnished transportation. We got down there and spent the night in the hotel and judged the next day, and then we checked out and spent the rest of the time we was there with the boys with the livestock. Well, we got along. Well, that was kind of.
What other activities did you?
And we won that contest. We was first down there, and Bill Ball was the high man, and I was third, and well, I think, and they put mules in the contest down in Texas, trying to see if we could judge mules, but we did. We won the mule trophy and the whole contest. So I don't know whether they kept mules in it or not. And all the mules they had was those out of the stockyards. They weren't real fancy show mules. And during the contest, right at the last of it, one old mule broke away and run off.
Did the team practice a lot?
Yeah. I remember when he took us one in the fall. We judged out in Garfield and Grant County, swine and horses and cattle. And I remember some of those farms out there yet. J.P. Beal, who's the father of Forrest and Art, were both graduates here, and Art taught there for several years. But anyway, then we spent the night in Enid, the Young Blood Hotel, which the hotel's there, the building's there, but the hotel isn't. I don't know, I think it's just business building. But then we judged in various others, and then when we was going to Chicago, we judged Kansas City. Oh, in November, early November, and then it was a little better than a week before the Chicago contest, and we judged in Iowa and Illinois and Wisconsin and Minnesota. So I've got a little traveling in with been an interesting college years.
What other activities were you involved with?
Well, I belong to the Aggie Society and the Collegiate 4-H Club, and in the junior year, oh, goodness gracious. Let me look here a little bit. Well, anyway, all block and bridle and one other one. Where's Peter? Oh, well, I can't find what I'm looking for, but
Was President Bennett?
President Bennett was here, and he did everything in his power to keep the kids in school.
Mm-hmm.
My junior year, I came back to school with less than $5. No way to borrow it. Folk didn't want to lend any money if they had any. And he says, if you'll enroll, I'll enroll you, and if you can pay for it before the end of the semester, you can enroll again. So I did. And there in the fraternity, well, I got a job working down at the grocery store, Farmer's grocery store down there. And back in those days, it didn't take a lot to enroll in college. There wasn't a thing as tuition, which is something now. It's just fees and Collie and Redskin and things like that. That's all the stadium fee and
Mm-hmm.
your ticket. And I took all that in, of course. And in the semester, I had to pay it up and enrolled again. And I worked down at the grocery store that first semester and into the second semester. And then I got a job with Dr. Kraft out at the Animal Science Department. He was a genetics teacher, so I worked up some of his figures on his genetics and his pigs. I don't know what I did, but I worked. And in my senior year, I worked out at the barns, hog barn. just plain old feeding and cleaning. And then I worked with Dr. Hawkins on a project. A breeding project with hogs. The old sows began to farrow their pigs, and for some reason or other they tried to be cannibals. They tried to eat the pigs. So that went sour. Or no, that wasn't that. They aborted. Something happened. So that went sour. So then he was using another professor's barns. So I had to clean those barns with lye water. And then I shifted over to the white rats. They were in the basement on the north side of the old Landman Husbandry building. Well, it was the mama rats that was eating the babies in that deal. So everything I worked with went sour. So I wound up my year maintaining the white rat herd. And all the fellows said that was my pension, $10 a month. That's how some of the kids got through college. That's how I got through college anyway. But I had a good time.
Tell me about sporting events.
Well,
Football, basketball, wrestling.
the 4 years I was in school here, we never lost a game to OU. We were tied one, but we didn't lose it. 0-0. And Lynn Waldorf was our coach. And he went from here to Kansas State, and from Kansas State 1 year to Northwestern. And he wound up there. So, and then following that, football wasn't very good. Basketball wasn't very good. A fellow named James was the coach. I had a fair team, but it wasn't very good. Ivy didn't show up until after I left. But the wrestling team was good. Gallagher was the coach, and they had, those 4 years, they had some good wrestlers here, and several of them went on to the Olympics and won. The one was quite interesting because I followed him, because he became a wrestling coach over at Locust Grove, and that's where my wife came from. So, Andy Hesser, you ever hear the Hessers?
Mm-hmm.
Andy he was a loud mouth and a lightweight wrestler. But he wasn't too bad. And he went over there to Locust Grove. And he and his loud mouth, why, they didn't believe half of his stories. But they were pretty well right. Anyway, and
Did you meet your wife here on campus?
I did my sophomore year. She came as a freshman
How did you meet her?
at a 4-H meeting, or collegiate 4-H meeting.
What was a typical date like?
Very simple. This old country boy was afraid to touch anybody, and you know, we met out. And then, there was a senior, my sophomore year, there was a senior girl here that I liked real well, but she was a senior and she was from Shawnee. And she went into teaching. And I was an old country boy and didn't have any money, so no travels. So didn't follow that up. And I had one other girl that was interested in, but she was from western Oklahoma, and I needed a date there at the fraternity, and another boy that knew her from that area out there, he got a date for me. We had a few dates, but she and her boyfriend from Enid, they liked to dance, and I didn't, so cut it off. Because I had one on the hook already, so. So, when I got out, I got a job at Newkirk as emergency agricultural assistant under the farm program, which turned into a regular job. Well, oh,
Do you remember graduation?
yeah,
Tell me about it. Where was it held? In the auditorium?
in the auditorium. And the speaker was the president of SMU, Selectman. Yeah, that's right. And
Family come in to see you?
my family came, and when I graduated, I didn't have a job. I left my name in several spots, and I went home and helped my brother harvest, and we had a little combine, and we did custom harvesting then, and that was in the 30s, and wheat wasn't worth anything, and it didn't make very much, and we got about a third of it, and the owner got about a third of it, and the fellow that put in the crop got about a third of it, which was very little. And but anyway, we went through harvest and we completed it, and I was helping a neighbor thrash oats. Fred Merrifield called me and asked me if I wanted a job. And I got a job as an emergency agricultural assistant in K County.
And did you become an extension agent?
Well, I was up there from July 34 until September 35, and they was talking about calling the the AAA or the farm program unconstitutional, and I got an opportunity to become a regular assistant county agent, and went over to Osage County down there, Hominy. There were two assistant men agents, one at Hominy and one at Fairfax, and one assistant home agent at Pawhuska, and the county agent and the home agent. So I went over there in September. And the county fair was going on, and so they put me to work at the county fair. I was the superintendent of the crops division. The only thing I really remember there were evidently several Greek farmers in the Pawhuska area, and they were vegetable farmers, and they was exhibiting it at the fair. And while I was taking entry, these fellows were speaking in their own language, and you didn't know what they were talking about. But so what? So I went down to Pawhuska, or to Hominy, worked with the 4-H clubs down there, and I remember one 4-H club over Shell Creek, which is immediately north of Sand Springs, and the only way you could get to that from Osage County was go back into Sand Springs and come out on the north side of Sand Springs to this Shell Creek school. And it was a 2-room school, pretty good sized school. And that was in the fall of 35. And if there was ever any community that was poor, no money, I tell you, on the roads around Hominy, you could see folks walking with a sack on their back with their groceries and things going home. And oil wasn't worth anything. The Indians didn't have any money therefore, so the old store there in Hominy, what was the general store there, it wasn't the Mullendores. The Mullendores were in the bank. One in the bank at Hominy and one in Cleveland. The Drummonds. What the Drummond name is well known here in
Sure.
Stillwater.
Absolutely.
And there were several of the Drummonds. There was Drummond in the Pioneer store, and I know there was a young Drummond that was over here in college. And he's one of the main Drummonds. Lives in Pawhuska now.
Frederick. Frederick.
Well, there was 3 Fredericks. 3 Fredericks.
There's so many of them.
And you had to almost identify them, but this was the young Fred. But he's older now. But anyway, rather interesting. So, I don't know too much other here in college while I was here, but no, one time I took a trip with one of the men out at the hog farm. He took some hogs down and I went with him down to the school at Tishomingo. And I remember on that trip we left pretty early, and down here west of Perkins we run into a bunch of cattle on the highway. No casualties, so we managed. And I tried to hitchhike one or two times. I couldn't have any luck. I'd get dumped off out in the middle of nowhere.
Did you have a car on campus when you were?
No, Lord, no. There was only 2 or 3 cars on campus that would run and go somewhere. And we had one in the School of Agriculture, and he was from Amarillo. I can't think of his name now, but anyway. And he was real popular.
I bet.
I tell you, that sheep barn is a long ways out there. And walking was everything. But, oh yeah. The cattle barn was out there, and the hog barns were still out there. The dairy barn was out there and smelled just like the dairy barn smells. The boys that worked there, you knew who they were. Even though they changed clothes, why, it followed them home. One of them lived at the house, Jim Childers. He was on the Aggie quartet. He sang at our wedding, but he's passed away. All my friends that I knew in college are gone. Oh, you wonder why the old man's still around.
Well, what is it about Oklahoma A&M, Oklahoma State that sparks such loyalty in alumni? Alumni are so loyal here. What do you think it is?
Well, I know one that isn't.
Uh-oh.
An old boy up in Medford. Galen Stockton. He graduated down here, and then they have football tickets to OU.
Mm.
He and his wife. Oh, you never can tell. He was. Yeah. No. There's just something about the old institution. And in my work, I've had assistants that were graduates here. In fact, after I moved to Woodward and became a full-fledged agent, and back in those days, you were a county agent. You were in charge of the federal farm program, although you had an assistant that did the day-to-day work, but you were still in charge and had the educational work. So Chester came out there in the spring after I went there in the fall. And he stayed with me a year. And then my district supervisor, who at one time was my county agent when I was a kid, he asked me about Chester, wouldn't he be good because the old boy down in Logan County wasn't getting along with the people. Said, well, I know one thing, Chester will sure get along with the people. He's got a few things to learn yet, but he went down there and stayed 6 years. Then he went home on Christmas, and his dad wanted to leave the farm, so they decided to move back to the farm in Lockney, Texas. And so then he bought another farm, and they went into irrigation farming. So we kept up with Chester Nykolaiszyn, the family, and that actually led to one of the professors here on the campus in the animal science department, Bob Kropp. I don't know whether you know him or not, but he's been here long enough to retire, but he's don't. And well, connections go everywhere, and a lot of the folks that we knew out at Woodward, I know some of them now live in Medford and all around us. But it's been a long time since I retired. 65. And I've kept busy. I worked for a furniture store there in Medford, and then he expanded in Blackwell, and he also run a funeral home. Well, I've had experience in a lot of lines. Worked for a fertilizer dealer, and I worked for farmers. And got along with them pretty good. If the old machinery went bad, why, they took care of it. And I've had some tractors kind of go bad, but I didn't wreck them. I caught it before it went too bad. But it's been interesting.
Any advice for students nowadays?
Well, you better get your main things ready before you get to college, because you'll have to take some courses with no credit. But I understand they've got a deal with NOC right here on campus now for those that have to make up work, which NOC is a pretty good school, and they also have a unit in Enid. So the advanced education is closer to the students now than it was, because the Northwestern has a unit at Enid. They also have a unit at Woodward. And Woodward has a vocational deal, along with Enid and a bunch of others. So, no, but the opportunities are out there. And the thing now, out here in the animal science department, you can get about anything out there in the department. Mm-hmm. A student can get. When I was in school, livestock production was it. Production was your animal science. And then it was just livestock. It wasn't poultry and, well, poultry. We had poultry. Chickens, Chicken Thompson and Hog Thompson. Professors here. Have you heard about them?
I've had, at least I think one other person mention them.
Well, Hog Thompson, he was an after dinner speaker. He taught feeds and feeding of livestock. But the interesting thing about, he had a son that was also in college here at the same time. And he was a newspaper man. He had the Nykolaiszyn and the Aggravator or whatever it was, and then back in those days, they tried to keep the boys and girls apart, which is difficult. And there was a lady and a man that kind of rode herd on that kind of stuff. They caught old Scoop and somebody in an uncompromising situation, and the next morning my Scoop was a former student. He just checked out. But later, he became editor of the Miami Herald, because we saw him down there when they had these parades. So he finally got his education somewhere. Oh, we've had some characters around here.
I bet you have. What do you remember of Chicken Thompson?
Well, he was a poultry, and I don't know too much about it. I don't know any particular stories on him, but I just know that there was chicken and hog Thompson. But I remember my chemistry professor, sophomore year. Now I can't take his name, but he was a young man at the time, and he was also interested in athletics. And I know after I graduated and came back here to basketball games, he was taking tickets. So names get away from him, but Al Darlow is the man that I really remember in the animal science department. And the year after I graduated, why, he left here and went to University in Wisconsin, and he was up there several years, and then he must have gone with that .4 program, because I know he was over in India. Then when he came back, I think he was vice president, wasn't he? Didn't he get to be vice president somewhere in later years? And but I sure did think a lot of he and his wife.
Did you get married while you were still a student?
Oh, no. No, I was out of here. She was senior after I was out. So I made lots of visits from Newkirk to Stillwater. I had a place to stay overnight. No, we were married. She graduated after summer school in 35, and we were married in October 35. And she thought she was going to move to Newkirk, and suddenly I changed things. Took her to Hominy, which is not a great place. Now they've got a prison over there at that little, close to the little school north of Hominy. No, and we moved from Hominy in the summer of 35. Oh, must have been early August. The town of Hominy ran out of water about 2 weeks after we moved. I mean, they ran out of water. Their lake went dry. They hauled water from Cleveland in tank cars. Well, I'll say they've got a lake out there now that they won't go dry.
Where did you move after Hominy?
Back to Newkirk.
Okay.
And we lived in, Dorothy and I lived in one room where I had stayed before until 1st of September for a house to be opened. Housing was hard to find back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
They wasn't building. I know after we moved to Woodward, well, I'd gone out there, main arrangement for a house. Then something got delayed the appointment. When I got to check on it, well, it'd been rented, so I had to hunt again. And then the next number, why, I still had a job out there, so I finally got me a loan and we built a little house. And that was the best thing I ever did. I had a few head of cattle back home, and Dad got where he couldn't take care of them, so he sold them. Back in 37, cattle wasn't very, you didn't get much for them, but I got enough to buy a lot. So I got a loan to build a house. That loan was for $4,025. That wouldn't go very far now, would it?
No, not at all. But back then.
It did.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty nice little house. 2 bedrooms, bath, living room, a little dining room, and kitchen, and back porch. Pretty well enclosed. And we moved into it in April, early April, because
39.
second little girl showed up the 21st of April.
May.
What?
May.
May? Well, it was May when we moved in then. Well, anyway. We've had, with the 2 girls, we had 2 accidents. Only one night, Dorothy and I stayed up all night. One time. And first time when Eileen was born, and Eloise was out there helping her dad do the laundry. And I looked about like that for something and looked back, and here come a little hand coming through the ringer.
Oh. Mm.
I mean, it was, oh, I got that thing stopped and reversed and released, and laundry stopped, and we took her over to the hospital, and he wanted an x-ray of that arm, but he wanted her to take some medicine of some kind, but we couldn't get her mouth open to get her. Oh, Doc says, take her home and keep her warm and comfortable, and we'll see what happens. That afternoon, she was out riding her tricycle. And as far as I know, he never had any trouble with it.
That's good.
Oh, that little problem was solved. But then when Eileen came along, and she was, around 11 months old, wasn't she?
Just walking.
Huh? Just started walking, and she was walking early. She walked on the old hot floor furnace.
Mm.
Now that was, well, we hustled her down to the doctor. I don't know, wasn't a whole lot he could do then, but he kind of patched her up, and we took her home. Well, it wasn't only her feet, but she was over on her hands. So the hands was bandaged, the feet was bandaged. Well, eventually she worked. We thought we'd have to do some grafting, but we didn't. And she wore corrective shoes for a long time. And as far as I know now, her feet look pretty good.
Did both of your kids go to Oklahoma A&M?
They did for a while. She graduated. The other one went,
From OSU.
huh? The other one went 2 years in the summer. And her boyfriend was a senior and she was a sophomore. So they eloped
Mm.
in March. And we found out about it in July. And they were about to move to Iowa. So they moved to Iowa, and he was ag teacher, and then he started going to school and studying in between, and he got a degree in counseling, so he became the school counselor. Spent 39 years in the same system. And then he retired. And bought up some old houses and overhauled them a little and rented them. And then what was it, 3 years ago, two years, a little over 2 years ago, he went to the hospital to correct an aneurysm and a valve in his heart. Spent 72 days in the hospital there in Omaha. Then didn't make it. So Eileen is sold out and cleared out and moved back to Edmond, where the oldest boy is a doctor.
So you got your family back in Oklahoma?
Well, that one, and of course, Willie had his brother John, and he's in Indianapolis. He got into Campus Crusade, and then he got into the ministry work and was working, and now he's changed the job. I don't know for the good or not, but anyway, he's changed. And they're in Indianapolis. That they have two girls. Let's see, 14 and about 11. And Willie has 3 children. His oldest son graduated from Edmond High School this spring.
Memorial.
Huh?
Memorial.
Memorial High School. Okay. Edmond, anyway. And the poor kid had one B on his, so he was a salutatorian. And how many valedictorians were there? 18?
Something like that.
Something like that. That poor kid, you know, he made a good enough grade on that SAT that he's got a free ride at OU.
Well, that's good. Education is good.
Yeah.
Education is good.
But, you know,
No
I
matter
think,
what.
but he's having to study a little now. Chemistry.
Sounds familiar.
Pretty well advanced chemistry, I think.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to tell us today? Any other stories you'd like to mention?
Well, there's one or two things that I would like to say.
Okay.
When I went to Woodward, the REA program was just getting underway. Kingfisher was the first one in Oklahoma. K County, Newkirk was the second one. And I was there when the old boy came and discussed it with the agent. And when I left, they were stringing wire. So I thought I'd go to Woodward, I'd have a job to do out there. Well, population was too thin. And they had to have 2 users per mile for REA. But a year or so later, they said if you get so much revenue per mile, so that's when we started. And so I called a meeting of Woodward County, Ellis County, and that part of Dewey County, north of the South Canadian River. And from representatives at that meeting, they organized and formed a 9-member to be there. And we started from there, and we organized, and they were all set and everything, and we had let the contract for a little better than 300 miles of transmission lines. And December 7th hit. And you know what happened then? Everything came to a halt. But we'd already built 30 miles. And so the powers that be says, well, you sure can't operate it on 30 miles. So they said, go ahead with your contract and build that. So we had a little over 300 miles of line. And we built that, and we added a quarter of a mile here and there during the war. And after the war, we expanded into Harper County and Beaver County and got our nose over in Major County. And Dorothy and I attended their 50th anniversary in 1990. And at that time they had 4,400 miles of transmission line. One of the good size, and it is doing good. And the oil business out there now is using it, and but anyway, they're also making electricity by wind out there now. She and I was out there last November and saw some of those big old windmills, although the wind wasn't blowing very good that day. And they don't move when the wind don't blow, but the wind blows most of the time. So that is a real going concern, and that brought that country out of the dark. And the living conditions were much better. When we was out there trying to sign them up to join in, they said $4 is too much to spend for lights. That's all they was thinking of. But when that power got turned on, they got more than lights. And another project that I started out there was the Soil Conservation District. John Nelson, the district man at Clinton, came up, and he and I held a series of meetings in the county, and we elected some supervisors during those meetings. They held an election, and it passed by 3 votes. Oh, they didn't know whether that was right or not, but then they decided at the state office that election had 3 majority, so we went ahead, and it is now one of the better districts in the state. They won a number of honors out there. So those are 2 of the things that, and then my 4-H livestock program, I think, was outstanding. We showed cattle, sheep, and hogs at the county fair, the district fair at Enid, in Oklahoma City, the fair, and the stock show at Tulsa. We showed at Kansas City, and we showed at Denver. So we placed well, and when I went to Woodward County, it was at the end of all the drought years ahead of it. And the cattle business, there were 2 men that had a few registered cattle in the county, and hardly any cattle. Well, the pastures had just gone. And but we kind of got the livestock program going back in the county, and the 4-H program, and then when I moved to Grant County, well, I followed it up there. Well, in Woodward County, we had the Grand Champion steer at Oklahoma City in '46. We had a group of 3 steers from county and schools, 3 years first and the 4th year for second. So, and practically all those calves were raised right there in the county. So we left there with a good livestock program. Grant County, we showed the reserve grand champion at Tulsa, the reserve grand champion steer at Oklahoma City, and we've had the grand champion lamb and reserve champion lamb at Enid. So we've done pretty good in our stock program in both counties.
Pretty good. The whole transmission line set up, that must have been amazing. I mean, you'd have to convince everybody to,
Oh yeah,
man,
all those folks out there, well, they didn't have any money.
that's right.
And of course, then they had to wire the houses. So I'm afraid if some of them was wired a little scantily, but I'm sure it's changed by now.
Sure.
No, I look back, I think I had a rather successful career. Nothing major or anything like that. I was selected as an individual from the state county agents on the Dow study tour, which was sponsored by Dow Chemical, which was a three week paid trip visiting the southeastern states. And the farming and industry, and we started in Memphis, went down through Arkansas, and the cotton, and then we saw the beginnings of the catfish industry. A whole quarter section diked up and feeding these catfish in there and harvesting them. And of course, that's where you get your catfish anymore. And we saw the paper industry. We went through 3 paper mills, one in Crossett, Arkansas, where they made cardboard boxes. That was their primary project. Oh, it was over in Mississippi. And the interesting thing in Mississippi was the Delta and Pineland Plantation, which is an English concern. They bought that land when they had something going on in England, and they were afraid that their cotton was going to supply might need it. And there's one thing about that, they was raising cotton, and they was raising pedigreed cotton seed. And you can still buy that Delta and Pineland cotton seed. And on their plantations, all of their tenants' houses were well painted, had screens on the doors and windows. And were well kept. And then, I don't know, we got on down in Louisiana, and then we got over in, well, we just crossed the Mississippi, but we were still in Louisiana, and we saw the sweet potato country. Then we stopped there at the Capitol and looked around a little, and then we all got down in South Louisiana. Now, there's an interesting country. Saw the sugar mills, and then we was in New Orleans, and we went on down the river from New Orleans down into Mosquito country. We got down into a grove of orange trees on down the river, and we got out of the bus and was going to see it, and we saw the trees in a hurry, and we got back in the bus. All those mosquitoes are. Then we saw mammoth piles of sulfur. It pumped out of the swamp, out of those deep wells, over into where it could be loaded on the boats, on the ships. Oh, that was interesting country. Then we saw the paper mill at Mobile, and that is the International Paper Company, and that they made bond paper and quality paper. They take those old pulp logs, which are, well, they'll go on a railroad flat car, and 8 feet, I think, is what they are. They'll run that through a hammer mill, and they just say, whoop, and that's it. It's pulp. And they put these in these big vats, which are probably about 3 stories high, with the chemicals that they put in there, and they heat that. And when it's ready, well, they just roll it out on that pulp out on a great long deal, and keep it rolling along with the heat under it. Next thing you know, it's paper of some kind. I don't know.
What year did you take this trip?
1960. And we got over into Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. We got into Florida just barely. We stayed 2 nights in Albany, Georgia, although they call it Albany. Quite an interesting. Georgia's quite an interesting. And we saw a lot of industry. One thing, the Mormon church. There's quite a cattle industry in Georgia and Florida.
I'm from Florida, so I know.
Oh, you know.
Oh yeah, Central
Okay.
Florida, especially the cattle.
Well,
Absolutely.
they pasture them down there, and then they're in the feedlots there in Georgia. Then we saw the Georgia Experiment Station, and we ate lunch one day with at the Georgia prison farm. They put their prisoners out to work. We had 10 plates, 10 cups.
And no knives.
But anyway, a good meal. Then we visited the Georgia 4-H Club camp. Eagle. Some kind of eagle. And it was built with prison labor. But it's a beautiful layout. And you have all kinds of conferences there. And we went up at the University of Georgia, the chicken business, on into, went across South Carolina, a little of it, into North Carolina. And on Saturday night, we were invited to view the play there that the Cherokee Indians have under these hills. That's when they moved the Cherokees from Alabama and Georgia to Oklahoma. And that's a play in regard to that movement. Then we went on up into Kentucky, in the bluegrass country. Saw some of the horse farms. And one of the most interesting things that we saw there was the farm or ranch or whatever you want to call it, of this big company down in Texas. Anyway, they had their breeding herd of the Santa Gertrudis cattle in Kentucky to keep away from the foot and mouth disease, which was prevalent about that time there on the border. And some of the beautiful cattle. Saw some of the tobacco farms in Kentucky and Georgia. Then we wound up back at Memphis and went through the International Harvester Company making cotton picking machines. Oh, that was a nice trip. Then I got to make another trip back to 4-H Club Congress in Chicago as a helper from the County Agents Association. Well, I made a few trips, and then we made a lot of trips to the National County Agents Conventions. From Miami, Florida to Seattle. And to Honolulu.
Oh, nice. So you got to see a lot of the country.
So I've seen a lot of the country. Traveled a few miles.
Mm-hmm. Not too bad.
It's been an interesting trip.
Well, anything else you'd like to tell us before we end today?
Well, I've been a member of a civic club. Joined the Rotary in Hominy less than a year. Moved to Woodward to join the Kiwanis Club. Was there a little over 14 years. Moved to Medford. Lions Club was there, so I've been a member of that 50-some years. I've been president, secretary a couple of times, and a little of everything else. And they honored me a couple of years ago with the old boy that was the originator of Lions Club. And of course, to do that, why the club has to put up $1,000. So, remember the Retired Teachers Association, Retired County Agents Association, Oklahoma National. Remember the Methodist Church. I said retired teachers, so. Oh well,
Masons,
whatever.
Masonic Lodge.
Okay.
I think that kind of covers the waterfront.
Well, we appreciate you telling us your stories today. We appreciate you sharing them with us.
Well, right offhand, I don't think of anything else particular that of course, well, there's one other thing. I have endowed a scholarship in the Animal Science Department. Let's see how many were presented. We're presented 9, haven't we? And 7 of them have gone to
That's good.
veterinary science.
Nice.
In other words, those vet science kids have to have a good grades.
Do you get to meet the students every
Oh, yeah.
year? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we have an annual. They have an annual meeting out there where these are presented
Mm-hmm.
in April. First week in April. Every time except one when Easter fell in that time. Oh,
Do you enjoy giving back and helping the students?
oh yeah. And if there's any residue at the end, well, they'll get a little more.
Well, it's good that you're still a big fan of Oklahoma State and a big supporter still of ag science. We appreciate you.
Only thing about I haven't helped Mr. Pickens too much other than that I've had a season ticket since in the early 50s. Of course, now she uses it.
That's a long time to be a season ticket holder.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Yeah, it was after we moved to Medford. Woodward's a pretty good hop, and then during the war, well, you didn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That gasoline was rationed, and tires was almost non-existent. I'm telling you, some of those folks on some of those tires, I don't know how they made it.
Well, we appreciate you, and
Okay.
we're gonna turn her off here.